Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Fantasy Football Universe. We are here for the second part of our three-part series, the FFU roster audits, where we take some dynasty rosters from some of our listeners and we tell them what we think about them and, what we do, what we'd be looking to do with their picks. And a lot of these teams have a lot of excess parts. I've noticed that in a lot of leagues. Especially dynasty leagues, it's like, oh, well, I got to have my roster spots, all of them full, which I agree with, but there's a lot of dead weight on a lot of these. So I am Aaron St. Denis. Follow me on social media at FFMadScientist. That is Jesse Moeller at JMoeller05. We've also got Jeremy and SC who aren't on the show today. Jeremy's at FF_Rebel, SC at the PPR show, and you can follow us anywhere on social media at the FF Universe, or head over to fantasyfootballuniverse.com. Any social media or media of any kind that you come across of ours, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, all that fun jazz. We will get right back. We interact pretty often. There's multiple. There's four of us checking in on most of the accounts. So someone checks in, tends to be every little bit, and we'll answer any questions. That's how we got to these. The first one we have is Life_Noel. Let me bring up the ticker for this one. 12-team Superflex, no tight end premium, 4-point passing touchdown, PPR normal. Picks are the 102, 112, 306, 307. So he's got two mid to late first and two mid thirds, no second rounder. So let's take a look. We've got the quarterbacks, a ton of them.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes, Jared Goff, Ryan Tannehill, Bryce Young, Aaron Rodgers. So you kind of have a mix of young upside and older quarterbacks. You are set at quarterback. That's going to annoy the hell out of me that I didn't capitalize Patrick Mahomes.
I saw that too.
My OCD brain, that's the first thing I noticed and said, damn it. Proofreading. Anyways, we'll move on. Not nearly as stacked at running back. He's got Jonathan Taylor and nothing. I liked Kendre Miller. Didn't really hit, injury issues. So Kendre Miller with JT, Eric Gray, and Trey Sermon. Receivers are pretty solid. Is this multiple teams with a lot of I noticed this the other day. A lot of teams had similar players. I don't know how many teams I've seen in our series here that had the Amon-Ra St. Brown, Garrett Wilson stack, and that's what he has here paired with Mike Evans, Demario Douglas, yet another team with a share of Rashad Bateman, because he's one of those guys like Jalen Reagor, where he got pretty decent draft capital, and I think people are just going to keep him on their bench hoping till about year 6 when we're like, yeah, this isn't happening. But Jalen Hyatt, Xavier Hutchinson, Andre Yoshivas, Michael Wilson, Tyquan Thornton, and his lone tight end is Dalton Kincaid. I like to have a little more depth in that at tight end, but I don't mind who he has. Running back, I was going to say, is the most obvious here. Sorry, let me bring him up here. I don't know if he had any questions. What does he do with the 102? And 102, and is he a contender? Right off the top of my head, I feel like he's a playoff team. Yeah. I don't know if he's a contender. Like, you're pretty light on high-end talent. You've got JT. You've got 2 awesome receivers, possibly a third one in Evans if he holds on. You've got a tight end who could probably be a top 10 tight end, 6 to 12. You're solid at quarterback. Quarterback doesn't worry me in a super flex, but this worries me here because the 102 in super flex, I guess I'm probably taking Marvin Harrison Jr., assuming he's fallen to me, and at the 112. I think I'm just going to shoot my shot on whatever running back I want. And then my 306 and 307, if I have a target at running back and receiver, those are the late targets I'm looking for. But I'm using all 4 of my picks, if I'm him, to stock up on some form of running back and receiver. My other thought here is if there's a QB needy team in the league, I would look to move. Your probably best bet. I want to keep Mahomes, obviously. I think Goff is the quarterback I want to roll with second. You could probably move Tannehill or Rodgers. Rodgers more so because he'll start, and maybe hope to get a decent RB2, RB3, wide receiver 3. But I am not totally opposed to getting rid of Bryce Young if I can get something of value. I'm not selling low on him. He was a high pick, so But in the end, my answer here is going to be I'm finding a way to get as many shots at running back and wide receiver as I possibly can, and that's where I'm going because that's what you really need. You're going to need some form of tight end also. So if one of these deals you can get another pick thrown in, a late third, add yourself Sinot, Theo Johnson, Jatavian Sanders, something like that. So at least you have a shot here or a depth tight end of some sort. I don't know.
I wouldn't worry too much about it is weird that they only have one tight end compared to all of these wide receivers.
I just want to back up is what I mean. Like even if you can trade yourself a Bateman or Hyatt or something for a high tight end two. Is what I'm
going. The 102, I'm taking the best wide receiver, whoever your best wide receiver is. If it's Harrison, Neighbors, or Odunze, pick your guy, take him there. The 112 and or Bryce Young, that's the part I'm moving to insulate this roster because once you get past the first three wide receivers, it's a lot of guys. Like I like Demario Douglas. He's the perfect guy for a contender. But outside of him, you have no depth at wide receiver outside of that. You don't have the tight ends. And you have no running back depth too also. So you need to insulate this roster with some proven productive veterans on top of just JT because it's just JT. It's nobody else you could count on. So if I'm using Bryce Young, maybe I move him into Saquon or maybe I move him into Ken Walker or I pick a running back in that range, James Cook. I don't care which one it is. You could do that with the 112-ish pick or Bryce Young, whichever one you're trading with.
What do you think of packaging the two? Packaging the two to get yourself a running back and a wide receiver, and who do you think you could aim for in a veteran who what would you like to get back of one of each for Bryce Young and the 112?
Yeah, so I mean I would go find a team that has both of those options available. Like whoever has depth available that can spare. You're not going to go to a team that's thin like yourself because they're not going to want to trade it, right? The price is going to be higher. So whoever has a lot of running backs, like with the teams we did yesterday where they had like 3 or 4 productive running backs. And then if you need a wide receiver, say it's a wide receiver, you have Mike Evans, but that's the perfect guy type in this build, right? Devontae Adams, those type of players, Cooper Kupp, if you like Cooper Kupp, whoever, old productive veterans. If you could find the cheaper, younger guys, absolutely do that. It's a little bit harder this time of year. I think Terry McLaurin's an undervalued name where you could probably get him for a mid-second. You could tier down like the 112 for Terry McLaurin, get a plus on top of that. Say they have the running back, you move Bryce Young, and you kind of make that deal that you're looking for. And that way your roster comes together and it's more whole, right? So you have more pieces and you look like a certified contender because you could roll with Goff. You really don't need Bryce Young on this roster. He's not playing over Goff or Mahomes, right? So he just sits on your roster. You're not going to play him.
Well, and that value, that high-end quarterback value is insulated. Sure, he could turn it around, but it's insulated for a couple of years. But as we've seen with Zach Wilson and Trey Lance, for a couple of years of non-productivity, it still holds its value. When it doesn't hold its value, it goes from 100 to 4 in a quick rate. So we've got SC has a few options here. I like this one of Young for Barkley. I think you could get that done. The other two I was wondering, okay, so Bryce Young, I like this of Kamara for Higgins. Do you think you could get that done? I know Kamara's older.
Yeah, I think
you could get that done. And do you want to make that deal?
I mean,
too old for me, I think. And Higgins, I don't know where he's going to be long term. I don't know if I could get this done, and I don't know if I would get it done.
I think you can. You don't have to do these specific guys, but these type of build where it's like a wide receiver in his mid-20s who's a solid producer who can be, a wide receiver 2 on team, so someone in that range. And the older running back, whatever it is. If you don't like Kamara, maybe it's Jacobs, maybe it's Jones, whatever, right? You kind of just pick those builds and go from there. I would more look into kind of the wide receivers that are younger, someone who's undervalued like Tank Dell. Maybe you go get him in a deal where you still have the insulation. Because if you're getting these older players, like with Diggs, he's already tanked in value. And he's not the number one producer. So you kind of have to pick and choose where you're going with this build if you want to go younger or if you really want to go all in as a contender where you move Young, you move that pick, and then you go get the older pieces. So it's really up to you how you want to orchestrate this team. I would feel safer getting the Tank Dells of the world, but I'm fine getting a Debo and, whatever running back you want to insert in there, like James Cook. Debo and James Cook, that type of deal is fine for me with a Bryce Young 112. I'm fine doing something along those lines. You could make this type of deal work. I think enough people like Bryce Young in Superflex leagues where now's a good time to move off of him where you have the insulation of the other two quarterbacks. So I'm only really keeping Bryce Young if I need him. If I don't need him, I'm fine moving him. Just re-rolling the dice with him because, to your point, he could be worthless next year.
This is the one that intrigues me the most. And I think what I want to do is I want to take Barkley because you have the high-end running back that you desperately need in the proven asset. But I don't think I want to do it straight up. What I'd like to do in this situation, I want to target someone who has a receiver piece that someone who everyone's giving up on, a Marvin Mims, Quentin Johnston, something like that, even a JSN, a player where everyone's pretty much giving up on them. They're significantly lost their value, but I think I might still, be able to salvage and get them here as a throw-in is what I'm looking for. So I'm looking for Barkley plus a high-end receiving throw-in is what I want. Someone with upside. Like Quentin Johnston could very well be the year 2 breakout. And when we do our year 2 breakout episode, I think he's probably going to be on my list of potential there. That situation, there's nobody else there. He had the profile, so I think that's what I'd like to do. I want to go young for Barkley and try and find a guy that I still believe in, if you still believe in Bateman, but I don't know. Even a DeMario Douglas, who, he already has him, but
yeah, he's perfect for like this. If you're trying to be a contender, he's the perfect guy to get because he's not valued at all and he will give you production. So those guys are ideal. Like Deontay Johnson's a higher end version of that where he's still undervalued and he's a producer. So you could maybe go look for him on a team. You can find these guys. They don't have to be super high end premium assets. You just want guys that can either significantly gain value or produce for you. So if you see them hitting one of those roles, then you want to target those guys.
I think I'd also, if I can't get a receiver, I'd ask for a 2nd round pick with it. Doesn't have to be an early one. Like there's plenty, Roman Wilson, Ricky Pearsall, Javon Baker. There's plenty of upside receivers in this class that I'd be willing to take a shot on and take a flyer there and hope that I hit on them and turn my one quarterback who I'm praying isn't the bust in the class. Although look right now, he looks to be the bust out of the top 3. You're not playing him. He's your QB4 on this roster, like Tannehill. If you can get a 3rd round pick for Tannehill, do it now and take another running back wide receiver here and start praying. That's I'd be getting trying to move
about Rodgers.
Yeah,
because that, like you saw the video of him yesterday, his left leg is so like half the size of his right leg because he's coming back from that injury, and it's gonna take him a while. So Rodgers might not be the guy we think he is. It's just gonna take him time. But with these wide receivers, I'm adding as many of these as on into deals. If anybody likes Bateman, he goes in the deal as a plus. Jalen Hyatt, same type of stuff, because neither of these guys are going to play for you. From Bateman all the way down to Wilson, those guys are not playing for you. And if they are playing for you, that's a problem.
I'm looking to thin out the lower end, the 3 quarterbacks and like the 6 receivers, and trying to package them here as to get anything I can. How big is a Benson or Brooks at RB2 for the season? That depends. I like both players. If I'm trying to compete, I'd rather Benson because Brooks, I think, is just as good, if not better. Brooks worries me with the November ACL tear. I don't know if Brooks is going to be ready to go right off the bat. Brooks is, if I'm drafting them, rookies, though, you never want to assume that the rookies are going to be hits in year 1. So that's why I don't like, relying on rookies in my contending team. It's just the way you need to do this. So I think go ahead.
Yeah, I'd be fine with it. I'm fine with Brooks at the 112. I think that's the same if he goes around 2 with the Cowboys. I think he's actually going to be pushed up higher than 112. He'll probably jump to 1.9 range, give or take.
No, I'm fine with the pick. I just don't know if they're going to be, if Brooks specifically is going to be a contender, and you need whatever. That's why I prefer Benson, because you need this running back to, if you take him at 112 with this roster, unless you can trade for another one, you need this running back to be at least your RB2, better than Miller is what I'm saying.
It's both those guys are going to, I think Brooks is safer from a landing spot perspective, but I think, they both have the potential to be an RB2 for you. Like that's in their range of outcomes. I think it's a little bit higher with Brooks just because I think he's a better overall player, but pick your RB1, whichever one it is, the landing spot you like the most. You could take that 112 if you really want to. I personally wouldn't. I would rather take a wide receiver because you still need insulation on that roster. So there's ways to make it work for you.
All right. Next up, we have at Andrew Gravis. 12-team Superflex tight end premium 4-point passing touchdown. He has the 103 and the 203. Quarterbacks are Burrow, Cousins, Levis. Running backs, Ramondre, James Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, Samaje Perine, Khalil Herbert, Damian Pierce, Jerome Ford, Zach Evans, Chris. That's supposed to say Chase Brown. I think it auto-corrected on me. It's Chase Brown, not the singer Chris Brown, although I hear he's really physical. So, Kendre Miller. Then we have wide receivers. We have A.J. Brown, Nico, Drake London, Jerry Jeudy, JSN, Xavier Hutchinson, Tutu Atwell, Marvin Mims, Quentin Johnson, Jake Ferguson, Hunter Henry, and Noah Gray at tight end. I feel like the main problem with this roster is, aside from 1 or 2 players, you're going to have a nightmare setting a lineup in this league because you have a lot of guys. You don't really have high-end talent. Like, I think James Cook and A.J. Brown are your every week starters. Okay, so your quarterbacks, you're starting Burrow and Cousins. But so you have probably an RB1 and a wide receiver 1. you probably are going to be starting Nico and London most weeks.
Yeah.
Assuming neither of them regresses, but like you've got 3 or 4 receivers and 2 or 3 running backs where you're going to be playing. Which one do I play this week? And that kind of scares me.
Yeah, like if it's a start 3 wide receiver league, the wide receivers I'm starting every week are Nico, AJB, and Drake London, and it's really not even close. And then it's maybe JSN if you want to go that route, but like you can't trust him as the wide receiver 3. We've seen that. So yeah, James Cook is my RB1. Ramondre is like an RB2, RB3. You have what you need is a tight end and tight end premium. Like you got Jake Ferguson, Hunter Henry, Noah Gray. You got it. So this is the ideal roster to take Bowers at the 103. I would try to probably trade back a little bit and see if I can get to 105. But like Bowers fits your team perfectly. If
SC's answering the question is, what do I need to do at the 103? Well, that's his question.
Yeah, like I would realistically, if you want to take the high end wide receiver or impact player, you could just trade the 103 for your top tight end 1. Like you could go do that if you want to do that. Take away the uncertainty with Bowers. You could go get, Laporta, whichever guy you want. Like you could make that move in a tight end premium. Like I think you could do that. That works really well because as much as I like Bowers, we don't know how it's going to go in a year 1 situation. So I would just go move the 103 for McBride, and I would put McBride in my starting lineup, and then my roster looks so much better. So that is what I'm doing with this roster. I don't know what you would prefer to do the 103. The 203, I'd probably just take the top running back.
Well, 203, I'm taking the top running back. 103, I think what I'm doing is kind of what SC is saying here. I think I'm taking my guy, my receiver at 103, whoever I want, and I don't know if you're going to get much for Judy, but I'm looking to package someone else. I think Nico and London are probably sell high candidates for me, and I'm trying to. If I can't package one of them for an elite tight end, then I'm gonna trade whoever I took at the 103, like you said, for the tight end. I don't even know if it's. I guess trade is who I want, but I don't know.
I mean, pick whichever high end tight end. You could maybe like get Andrews and a plus on that type of like you can make it work because he's older, right? But if you take the Marvin Harrison Jr., you take Neighbors, and then you trade like whoever of those wide receivers for McBride, like I don't know if those guys are going to get you him in tight end premium.
No,
depending on how the market values tight ends in that league. If it's like a high end tight end premium, because it doesn't say. So that's kind of the uncertainty with how heavy tight end is here.
No, it just says tight end premium 1.5.
Yeah, we'll say it's 1.5. So if it's like like I'd be fine taking Bowers or trading for the high end tight end. Like I would be. That works a lot better than doing the wide receiver and trading. But like if you could trade the wide receiver and do it that way, and then you get the high end wide receiver prospect, I'm fine to go that route. Both of those sound like a really good plan with the team. You do need to run the running back though. Like it's fine with. I don't trust Ramondre is my whole issue with this team. So you have James Cook, you trust him. He's still kind of sketchy as RB1, and then it's just Ramondre's iffy. And it's like Zeke. You need another older veteran running back like a James Conner or somebody that you could insulate where you could just play them every week. Like you need somebody like that on this roster.
I feel like this is one where I want to start consolidating a bit and take a couple of the assets and pair them together and get something better. I also am not opposed with flipping Levis here to a QB needy team. Not exactly sure what his value would be, but
he's the same thing as Bryce Young. He's like 108 through 112 range. But
I think he might have more value than Bryce right now.
What sucks with Kirk Cousins is your QB2 on this roster. Like if he's not back right away, you have to you kind of have to man the fort, and you're going to have to put like JSN in your super flex spot or something.
Yeah,
you're going to have to play that game for a while, and it's super risky to play.
I hadn't factored that in, so you can't do that. You got to hold on to Levis and hope he starts because you can't. Yeah,
like you could do a multiple move, like a tear down type thing, where you trade Levis for like a late first, whatever pick you do that in, and then you go get a super old quarterback we talk about, right? Like a Daniel Jones or somebody that we know is starting in 2024, and you can insulate them until Kirk Cousins starts, right? Like you could go do that. It's just that's making about 4 or 5 moves as to just making one move, right? So it's if you're able to make all of these long-term plans with these deals and do it like we talk about, go for it. But if you can't, then just kind of do the simple route.
I think I don't mind if I could trade down out of the 103 a bit. Maybe get yourself one of the other, get Neighbors, a Dunze or something like that, and add an additional pick to add a running back or a wide receiver. But that's pretty much what you need to do. You need more assets here. Not more assets. You need higher end. You need some tiering up here. You've got a lot of guys where, like running back wise, Elliott, P. Ryan, Herbert, Pierce, Ford, unless Chubb is out. Like none of these guys after Cook is really going to be a consistent starter. And none of these guys after London, like I guess Judy and JSN have potential, but Judy's on the Browns.
He's on the Browns, yeah. Like
at that, but
JSN's the clear fourth wide receiver on this team. And then it's Judy's a dart throw, and Mims is specifically high. So if I can move Mims to someone of like that values him, I'm immediately trading Mims. Like I'm not doing this quarterback situation, all that fun stuff. So I would consolidate, like you're talking about, a few of these guys because you have a ton of depth pieces that you are never going to play, and then you insulate. And like we talk about moving back to 107, what's the plus you can get on top of the 107 from the 103, right? Like you're still getting a high end player. Like what if Bowers goes 107, right? Like you could get him there. So there's a way you can make this work. It's just a little bit sketchy if you're counting on the tight end at 107.
Yeah, this one's pretty easy. It's what you need to do. You need higher end wide receivers and running backs, and you just got to do what you can to acquire them, whether it be through picks or consolidating here. You've got
really fine with the top three though. Like I really like those top three wide receivers. It's just I think you need to insulate it with an older, like a producer, like we talk about the Mike Evans.
I think you need more at running back. You lack at running back here. So
100%. You need another, like we talked about with Connor, those type of James or Aaron Jones, all those guys.
Next up, we have at Klepto in Kansas. This roster's huge. 10-team super flex, half PPR, no tight end premium, 4-point passing touchdown, has 2 late fourths, 2 late fifths, so not a whole lot of picks. His questions were, which players are roster cloggers he needs to get rid of, and what does he do with all the old receivers? So he has quarterbacks. He's got Purdy, Stafford, Murray, Jacoby Brissett, Desmond Ridder, Jameis Winston, Anthony Richardson, Jake Haener. There's a roster clogger right there. Running backs, Brees, David Montgomery, Swift, Aaron Jones, Chase Brown, Ronnie Rivers, Keaton Mitchell, Elijah Dotson. Wide receiver, AJB, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Mike Evans, Rashee Rice, Dobbs, Thielen, Shaheed, Trey Tucker, Amari Cooper, Juju, Jacoby Myers, Demario Douglas, Justin Shorter, and Tyler Scott. And his tight ends, he has Evan Engram, Isaiah Likely, TJ Hawkinson, Darnell Washington. There are, I guess, as far as roster cloggers go, you got a whole bunch. I am going quarterback at very least. Jake Haener's gone. Probably Jameis Winston. Probably Jacoby Brissett. Running back, we have Rivers and Dotson. Bye-bye. Wide receiver, I'm probably getting rid of Shorter and Scott at very least, and at tight end, I'm getting rid of Darnell Washington. So just without even thinking of it, that's probably 8 players you could trim right off the bat. What are your thoughts?
Yep, 100%. I'm with you. There's a lot of guys like Rashid Shaheed, Trey Tucker. I know they're young, but they're in 10 team. These guys are worthless. In 10 team, I want the most premium assets you could possibly get because it's so important to have those guys. You need the true difference maker. So you have Richardson, you have Kyler Murray, you have the quarterback situation set. Those guys take off this year, like you're set there. You have Brees, your RB2 in the 10 team. I do not like your guys that much. Like they're solid players, Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery, but you're getting cooked by somebody in the league in 10 team. Same thing with the wide receivers. I like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I like Mike Evans. They give you nice AJ. 2, and then AJ Brown, that's the solid 3. The tight end situations, Evan Engram, he's fine. So you're competitive in a 10 team, but like looking at 10 team rosters, I'd still think you're a little bit short. You need a couple other like high end assets is what I would expect most 10 teams to be.
And that kind of answers his question of what to do with the older wide receivers here. I think if I can, I'm going to package Purdy, one of Montgomery, Swift, or Jones, and say Amari Cooper, something like that. So that's you could get. I'm sure you could get a solid RB2 for Purdy, Cooper, and one of those 3 running backs, especially in super like.
I think you can get a good running back for that.
That's what I mean. You could probably get a low end RB1. Like you could, I would imagine for Purdy, say it's Purdy, Montgomery, and Cooper. Think you can get James Cook for that?
Yeah, for sure. Like I would aim higher than Cook. I would actually package Swift in a deal, and I would use his value insulation because he's far more valuable than Montgomery or Jones. And I'm going high. I'm looking for Gibbs. I'm shooting the moon with my shot. Maybe you could get CMC. I doubt you can because of how people treat CMC in 10-team leagues. But I'm shooting my shot to get the top. I'm going the RB1 all the way down the list. I'm sending everyone in that league the offer who has the high-end running backs. If they have the depth to it, I'm saying the exact deal to everybody because you never know. You could always overshoot your shot. If you undershoot it, that's your own fault. So you got to aim high. Same thing with a wide receiver outside of your top 3. If we talk about packaging up, getting that 4th wide receiver, or if you want to upgrade from Evan Ingram, like you can do these type of deals, right? And then you consolidate the depth. You're also, instead of cutting guys, you're just trading them away. So the other team takes them, right? So those roster cloggers for those guys. So you package them that way. You don't have any picks, which is unfortunate, but like go find a way to consolidate your depth into those high-end pieces. So upgrade, just throw a bunch of guys into deals. Make it work.
That's the other thing. Like, so you got a lot of roster cloggers. Before I drop anyone, I always try and trade them for a 3rd or whatever it is. So try and get some more picks, but you've got a ton of pieces. In a 10-team league, you're not going to need them all. Like, you've got Purdy, Montgomery, Swift, Jones all have value. Then you've got Rashee Rice, Dobbs, Thielen has some value, Cooper. Got Evan Engram, Isaiah Likely. Like, you've probably got 10 assets here where on a given week they're not going to start for you, that you could parlay those. You could parlay those 10 players into one wide receiver 1 and one running back 1, I think. Very 100%.
Easy. And also you could throw Hawkinson into a deal because he's not going to play till the end of the year.
So then you keep him and get rid of Hawkinson.
Yeah, like I think Hawkinson holds more value over him easier. Like, if you want to really shoot for the high-end wide receiver, high-end quarterback, high-end running back, do not feel bad of like throwing a lot of these guys into deals, because it's really hard to get these guys because they're so valuable in 10-team and small leagues. Like, they're true difference makers. They're hammers, as they call them about Dynasty Trades 5. Those guys make all of the impact of the world. So Myers, DeMario Douglas, I like those guys in 12-team. I don't like those guys in 10 teams because it's just harder for those guys to be producers. So throw them into a deal. Figure out the team that has depth at they're stacked with it, and just attack them. Or if it's a team that needs it, right? And then you go that way. You're like, all right, package that deal to as many teams as you can. But you got to consolidate a little bit with this team.
Yeah, one thing here is, though, you can't consolidate too much. I did notice that it is only 10-team, but it's 2 running back, 3 wide receiver, 3 flex. So he does have a lot more of these guys that will crack his lineup.
Yeah, it's 10. That means you're starting 10.
Yeah,
it's because
so
it's
you
2
consolidate. You just can't consolidate as much in like a start 1 or 2 flex league because you still need some depth.
So you're still starting. There's less starting players in this league than there are the 12-team start 10. Like, because that's 120. If you're starting 10 people in this league, there's only 100 players that are starting each week. So like, we look at it from that perspective, the guys have more value, the higher end guys. So I get it. The depth is nice, but like, we're talking about, you have enough depth at all the positions where you could manage a couple of these trades where you tier up like a couple times and then you're consolidating a little bit. You still have depth because you'll still have Jacoby Myers, you'll still have DeMario Douglas, one of Amari Cooper. You'll still have a few of these running backs. Like, you have enough depth where I wouldn't be too worried about it, where I would just start, I would start insulating. And then unfortunately you don't have the picks, which sucks. But other than that, yeah, I'd go make those deals. That's immediately what I'm trying to do with this team. And it's really hard with 10-team because people love the high-end assets. So you have to very much come with strong offers.
So I think in the end here, you've got to tier up, but I would say your first priority is tiering up to an additional high-end running back. If you can also tier up and get a high-end receiver, great, but your focus needs to be getting a combining however many assets. Even if you give 1 quarterback, 1 running back, 1 wide receiver, and 1 tight end, you need to come away with a running back that is a top 12 running back. So, somewhere, even if it's RB5, that's what you got to come away with. And then after that, focus on consolidating a bit more for wide receiver. Don't consolidate too much, though. Leave yourself a little bit of the depth, but also get rid of these roster cloggers. There's got to be, like, Brissett could start, Ritter, Winston, all these guys have
Ritter for sure.
Maybe, but I mean, even if you try,
because of that, yeah.
No, I was going to say he has to keep Ritter because he has that's his handcuff if you're going to keep one. But I would be looking to trade Brissett or Winston to whoever has Watson or whatever, even if you can get a 3rd or 4th round pick out of it. Some of these guys like Ronnie Rivers, you're probably not going to get much out of. Keaton Mitchell, I'd try and get a pick for. Dotson needs to be dropped. And then you've got Shorter and Scott probably need to be dropped. Darnell Washington. So you've got a lot of roster cloggers that just need to be flat out dropped, but I always try and get a 3rd, 4th, or 5th round pick before I drop them, but who knows if you can.
And if you can't trade those guys and they don't like the players, go find the market for those. But like Hawkinson, go find his value, get like a mid to late first in this deal. Go Rashee Rice, same thing. If you cannot trade them in that way, pivot them into picks because people like picks, and then you package the picks into deals. So it might be a 3 or 4 step process, but you can make it work. You just kind of have to put in a little bit more work that way.
And I didn't capitalize Patrick Mahomes again. The disrespect.
Must not like him.
Okay. So we're flying today. So this is our last one. Ian Sapp 7. It is a 12-team Superflex 4-point passing touchdown, full PPR, tight end premium. He has the 101, 108, 109, 208, and 310. Where was what he said? Let me look. He had no notes. So I think this was a rebuild. Quarterbacks. Yeah. He has Mahomes, Stroud. So you're set at quarterback. Don't worry about it. You have Wentz, Dobbs, Stidham, Tyrod, Malik Cunningham. So I'm cutting Wentz, Stidham, Taylor, Cunningham, and maybe I guess if you want to hold Dobbs and Hooker, go for it. Running backs, you could tell this was a rebuild. All of them can go to waiver wires. Jordan Mason, Justice Hill, Kenny McIntosh, Eric Gray, bye-bye. Miles Gaston, also bye-bye. Wide receivers, I like you've got Puka, you've got Tank Dell, Treylon Burks, I think I'm about done with. So you've got 2 high-end wide receivers, and then you have a lot that need to go. Tutu, Sky Moore, Xavier Gibson, Trenton Irwin, De'Ami Brown, Jalen Tolbert, Brandon, that's supposed to say Brandon Johnson, Jake Bobo, bye, and goodbye. And tight ends, you have Likely, Bellinger, Higgins, Allen. So you have your odds. Don't even think about using any of those picks on a quarterback. Your quarterback is fine. So you need to be trading out of the 101 because you don't need Caleb here. You have Hooker or Dobbs as a backup if you're in an emergency. You can even trade back. You draft a third quarterback, draft Penix or something in the second round if you want one. But you roll with Mahomes and Stroud. Other than that, like you need to be focusing on, I would try and acquire more high-end wide receiver talent for me and a decent tight end. Because for me, the last thing I do is always acquire running backs. You won't see me starting to acquire running backs. I'll draft a few, but you won't see me using or acquiring high-end running backs until I'm damn sure I'm ready to contend because they have the shortest shelf life. So 101, I think we agree, trade back.
Yeah, if I will say with this roster, I don't care about points, so I'm fine rostering. Why am I blanking on his name? The 101, Caleb Williams. Jesus Christ, I'm fine rostering Caleb Williams with this roster until I can trade him. I don't have to trade it. What I'm looking for is the high end wide receivers. I'm going to target the big 3 wide receivers, and I'm just going to shoot my shot 101 for one of those guys. If they need a quarterback in 101, they have those guys. Go set it for Jefferson, Chase, or CD. Any one of those guys. Get him on your roster. See if you can do that. You could do that way. Otherwise, if you could tier back, like get more bonus points because you need to fill this roster out, and it's solid at wide receiver, but you need more players. You need tight ends. You need running back. So if you move back, say if you move back to 105, you get the future 105 plus a future first, like type of deal like that, and then you stay within the range of players. Like you could make this work. Just be very liquid with the 101. Don't be forced.
Funny here. It's funny because I'm anti Brock Bowers tight end in the first round. This build with you having the 108 or 109, if he falls there, that is your best case scenario. There is your tight end. You take somebody else at 108 and then you take him at 109, make yourself feel better about the tight end. And that's what I like to do. Yeah, I didn't draft him in the last pick of the first round. I drafted him in the first pick of the second round. So.
You're like, what's up?
So that's what
I'm doing 100% that. Yeah. Like I'm not even worried about running back because you're not competing this year. Even if you take running backs, like your wide receiver depth isn't there. I'm assuming that you're starting 3 wide receivers because you have so many wide receivers. And like, if it's a couple flex spots too, you look at who you would have to flex.
3 flex. Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck with this roster. So I don't care about points at all. What I'm just trying to do is just build up my value on my roster. I'm taking this roster and I'm trying to make it a contender in 25. So I'll fight through this year. Like just go get the wide receivers or, go get more future picks. Like just build more capital into your roster. So by this time next year, you have a roster that looks so much better where it's like a bunch of good young players and it's like slowly on the come up where you could go get your running backs into 25 and then be a contender.
So I think I'm taking Bowers at the 108 if I can get him. I'm trading down from the 101 if I can. Say I trade down to the 105 and I add a second rounder. So I'm taking Bowers at 108 or 109, and then my other 4 or 5 picks or however many I have are wide receivers, I'm pretty sure. And I'm just loading up on wide receivers because that's the way you're going to have to build this one because you don't really have any trade assets that have value that you can afford to give up. Your quarterbacks, you have 2 good ones and a bunch of ones that are waiver wire. You have 5 running backs that all belong on the waiver wire. You have 2 wide receivers that you're going to keep. Treylon Burks, if you can find a glutton for punishment, and a bunch of receivers for the waiver wire. Then you have maybe Bellinger and Likely, who have more value to you than a team. So, like, you have no assets other than these picks. So, trade down out of 101. If you have to trade down a few of these picks multiple times, acquire picks. But I think your best case scenario, like I said, is Brock Bowers here. Otherwise, maybe take Ben Sinnott late. But for me, this is pray for Bowers and then grab as many rookie receivers as I can. And even if you said, like, if you can't trade out of the 101, draft Caleb and then try and trade Caleb for, maybe someone wants to give you a guy who's not going to play this year much, half the season. Trade for Hawkinson and, I don't know, a receiver you like. Who's a receiver you like? I don't know, someone.
As far as like an additional piece like that, that's a good question. I was also thinking you could tear off of Stroud in this deal because you need to get value in a certain way. So what's the difference between Stroud and Jordan Love or Kyler Murray or Trevor Lawrence, those type of players? So, like, what's the bonus I'm getting on top of tearing down from Stroud to that range of player, right? Because I need to insulate this roster with more value. So even Stroud and Mahomes, like, those guys are movable in this deal if you give me the right package. So go look for a package that you can get with building block assets. If they have that deal, what's the plus they're willing to give on top of Love to get to Stroud? Because Stroud is consensus QB3, and some people have him higher, right? So that value with Stroud, he feels like I'm not saying he's peaked, but he's almost up there with Mahomes. So I'm picking whichever one of those two quarterbacks or both of them, and I'm tearing off of those guys to try to insulate this roster with value. And if you could do that, sure. If not, you just hold Mahomes and Stroud, and you just roll with those guys for the next 5-10 years, right? So there's a lot of ways to move this roster. Everyone's liquid with this team because as much as I like Puka, as much as I like Dell, I'm willing to move everyone to insulate my roster if I'm getting bonus additional pieces on top of it. So be willing to move everything on this roster to look for 25. So, like, however you do it with incremental gains, if it's a small deal, maybe it's Stroud into Lamar. What's the plus on top of that? Mahomes into, the QB2, Josh Allen. Like, there's ways where you could do slow gains or you could just go for the big shot deal where you're like, give me a package built around Love, and then I'll do Puka Nacua. I'll tear down to, like, whatever it is, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave. If someone has a plus on top of Olave, I'll be willing to move everybody on this deal for that. And then I would be looking to just accumulate more assets, build in 25.
That might be another approach to this. Like, everyone on this team, so you keep Mahomes, but you have to consider here that at very least, or it's a very real possibility that of Stroud, Puka, and Dell, all three might be sell highs. I don't know if it's true, but all three could very well have just had their career year. We don't know. We don't know. Like, we have 1 year from all three of them. So they seem like they could potentially be, you sell Stroud, Dell, and Nacua, you might have enough draft picks and players here to restock the shelves for the next 5 years. So it would be a total rebuild, and you're going to suck next year, but you're going to suck next year anyways, I think. So
right. If you package off a Stroud into like a monumental deal, you have the 101, right? Then you could just draft Caleb. So, like, you could make that work that way, just replace him that way. So you don't necessarily need a quarterback in this deal. I get it. Caleb's a hell of a lot more risky than Stroud is. We know what Stroud is. He's going to be a very good quarterback for a long time. But if you want to play the value game, you could do it that way, where you could move off, just go back, get the 101, and then, like, you could just recycle these picks and do it. I'm flipping everything I can to insulate value gains. Whatever deal someone's want to give me a second on top of a player, same tier, I'm doing that. Like, with rebuild like this, you just have to be severely active and be willing to make a lot of moves, because that's how you turn this team into a contender. It's just by sitting and picking and stuff like that. It's not going to get you there. You need a little bit more than that.
Alrighty. That concludes our second edition of FFU roster audits. Check us out over at fantasyfootballuniverse.com. Check us out on all the socials at the FF Universe. Like, review, rate, subscribe, comment, all that fun jazz. Follow us on the socials. We are back again tomorrow for the third and final edition. Don't be afraid to trade Mahomes for the right price. Yeah, it depends what the right price is.
Yes.
Is that another one? Might try to. Oh, sorry, you got that one. I don't know why it came up as new on mine. Anyways, we will be back tomorrow for the final one of these at noon, hopefully, and then we will be starting a heavy dose of coverage Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We are going live during the day, Thursday and Friday, and then live during the draft. Thursday morning, it looks like we're going our last mock draft without landing spots and some players that we think are, ticking time bombs waiting to happen, who could really lose value at the draft. Then we'll go live for the draft, and we'll be here all weekend long from Detroit. So thank you for tuning into the Fantasy Football Universe. We will see you again tomorrow at noon.